Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel this evening. Let me just make sure everything is, I should have done this before I went live. Let me put my comments on. Hi, Birdie. It's nice to see you. I'll definitely put that on my list of things to talk about, and I might actually talk about that in the beginning because it goes along with what I want to talk about as one of the first topics. So I'll just give people a couple of minutes to join me right now. So let me just get a couple of things ready, and then hopefully people will start joining in. So I'm going to grab my pen and my paper because I actually wrote notes because there's so much I want to talk about tonight and I don't want to forget. So I have my notes here. So let me just grab these. Okay. And then, all right. Okay. So now I'm not going to forget. I have my list. I have a list. Okay. So what I wanted to start with tonight, so this is also a Q&A, but I always like to come in with topics first, to spend the first portion of the evening speaking about certain things. And generally the reason I choose these certain topics is because one, they're coming up a lot in my one-on-one sessions with the adults and children over the weeks in between the lives that I'm doing. But also they're coming up as questions in comments of the videos that I'm doing or emails. And I feel like if it's repeated, I feel like it's something I should talk about. And these things that I want to bring up tonight, I don't think I'm saying anything I've never said before, or I haven't said before rather. But I just want to reiterate certain things because I think sometimes we're not in a place where we can hear certain things from people, and we've all been there. And my favorite thing is when I tell my husband something a million times and it's like he says he's listening, and then weeks later he'll come home and be like, babe, let me tell you about this person said this to me. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I said that like 15 times already. But sometimes, sometimes you got to hear it from someone else, or sometimes you got to say it a different way, a different time. And then it hits home for some people. So that's why I think it's a good idea to reiterate certain topics sometimes. And so I want to say hi to people really quickly. Hi, Janie. Hi, hey, Suzanne and Tammy, Birdie. It's nice for all of you guys to join me. I really, truly always appreciate everyone's support and all your kind comments and emails and everything. It really keeps me going. I really... Those of you that know me, I don't half-ass anything. So I put all my effort into almost everything that I do. And hopefully that reflects and it shows. I prepare for these things. I truly sit and think about what is most beneficial. And then I hope that it relates. So star seeds. This is a big question I get a lot, is star seeds. I think it's a valid and important question. I talk about star seeds a lot, and we use that term loosely. There's also the term way shower. There's light worker. There's lots of different terminology. Volunteers that I think we can call that Dolores Cannon's term, because she used it most. She's most known for using the word volunteer the most. But there's lots of different ways to explain the same thing. And I think it just gets confusing. And the number one question I get is, am I a starseed? Now, my opinion might be different than other people's opinions, but I truly believe everybody is a starseed. At the root of all of us, we are fractals of light. We are fractals of source creation, God, a fractal of light of something much bigger than ourselves. And we all come down as individual beings of light with our own individual consciousness in order to have experiences and learn lessons. And some of us choose more challenging lessons than others. But at the end of the day, we are all connected by this beautiful light grid of energy we call it the collective consciousness. And we keep the records of these experiences and lives, whether they're on Earth or other planets and other universes, in what we also refer to as the Akashic records, which also has a lot of other terminology, and it might be called something different someplace else, but it's widely used. That term is widely used. So if we're all having an experience and we contribute to the knowledge, the collective consciousness of infinite possibilities, because there are millions and millions, if not trillions, of souls in experiencing different things in different ways on different planets and different densities and with different densities of consciousness in different dimensions. And that's a lot. That's a lot of information. So we can utilize all of that by tapping into the innate wisdom or the collective wisdom of infinite knowledge. And we forget that sometimes because we have, the other thing I believe is that most people have, if not all, except for the NPCs and some exceptions, we volunteer to come here, regardless of the level of consciousness that you have. Again, innately, I believe we are all star seeds to some level, and we don't originate necessarily from any particular star cluster or a planet. But we do connect, just like we do now in this life. We think of a certain country or state as our home. That's where we're most comfortable with, even if we weren't born there. That's our place. So think about it in the galaxies, how many lives you've had in different places, and maybe you really resonate with the Pleiades or Andromeda or wherever. And so when I do a soul origin reading on somebody, I might say you have a dominant, connection or origin to Arcturus. But that doesn't mean that you are exclusive to Arcturus. I mean, we've all been to many different places. I can't say we've all been everywhere because that is an infinite statement. That isn't, I couldn't possibly know that. But I assume that majority of us have had experiences in many different places. So speaking specifically about Earth, though, and the ascension, we choose to come in here. So there's different levels of star seeds. And that, again, not a hierarchy, just, who's here doing what role and why. We all have a purpose. We all have a significant reason to be here. I've talked about this in all three of my books to some degree and in many interviews. And I've talked about kind of the three categories. We have those that are deeply embedded in the 3D in programming and have had probably hundreds of lives on Earth. Doesn't mean that they're not evolved souls. It just means maybe perhaps they have been tricked into coming or being reborn in that wheel of samsara. And they've had a lot of lives of trauma. And so this life, they've actually chosen to come in. But this life is about healing, not only themselves, but healing their many lifetimes and their ancestral trauma. So for their entire ancestry, their genetic kind of lineage, but also a soul healing lineage. So you're healing a large percentage of souls that are connected to those lives that you've had. So it's a big one. So a lot of people, things are bubbling to the surface right now in a very traumatic way. And a lot of people don't know how to handle the feelings that are coming up, or old traumas or old wounds are coming up seemingly out of nowhere. But I want a lot of people to realize and recognize that you chose to be a part of this and this whole transformation that's occurring right now in the collective. And part of that is taking on the ancestral healing, agreeing to, while you heal your traumas of, let's say, sexual abuse, or your traumas of grief, or your, lifetimes of experience of dis-ease, and you come in and you experience that again, you're transmuting not only your dis-ease, your grief, your traumas from all these other lives, but everyone else that's attached to you in your specific soul group, or even just Earth as a whole. So it's much more profound than people realize. So when people say I'm only me, I'm not doing anything, or how could I possibly contribute? And I want to tell people you just don't realize the multi-dimensional aspect of what is going on in the collective. So we have the healers that are healing, and many of those are on their last life. I can't tell you how many sessions I've done with hundreds of people who I have been told adamantly by their soul, this is their last life. They've been here, they've been around the block a few times. After they do this kind of life of ancestral healing and transmuting trauma and clearing karma, they're gone. They can't wait to go home. And then there's this other group I'm not going to go too far into this because I've already explained it. But then there's that middle group that's they're volunteers to come in here. They haven't had quite as many traumas, but they're experiencing a certain degree of trauma for a certain part of their life on purpose, so that they can relate to the others, because then they're going to turn around at some point and be of service to others and to help other people heal and get through those things. So perhaps they suffered with drug addiction, and then they were able to heal from it. And now they're going to go later in life, and they're going to help others recover from drug addiction, for example. And they're going to do a really good job of that because they've been there. They know exactly what it feels like. And someone else can come in and try to relate to that person, but you don't really know unless you've experienced it. So we need kind of that. And then we have the ones that are full of service to humanity. They're not here to learn anything. They're not here to transmute any of their own karma, or they have minimal contracts, and they're just simply here to be of service. So those are the three main categories that I personally have worked with and seen the most.
But if you break those starseed categories into two, we have what I refer to as the newbies, the earth, what do I call it? The new recruits. And those are a lot of the new earth children that I work with that are on their first life here. They are evolved and ascended to a degree we don't understand, we don't comprehend here. They are very evolved souls, millions of years old, with an infinite amount of experiences compared to us, and they are in a much higher density of consciousness, and they volunteer to come here. And they are the ones that are kind of the newbie souls, meaning they're new to earth and they struggle a lot. And I think that's a large demographic of the children and young adults and the youth that somebody told me recently I talked too fast, and now I'm self-conscious about it. I just have so much to say. So then we have the ones that are, they have earth training. They actually have earth schools. I talked about this a couple of years ago with my video of the boy from Alpha Centauri, and how he trained for 100 years before he came here, 100 of our Earth years to train on how to be a human being, because he wasn't used to this density, this body, the food we eat, the way we operate. And it takes a long time for some of these souls to integrate into this reality. And some of them don't do well and they exit immediately because they can't handle it. Not because of nefarious 3D interference that I talk about, but they actually are like, whoa, they are completely fish out of water, and it's almost toxic shock syndrome in a way to them, and then they exit, and then they have to regroup and retrain and then come back. So sometimes that's what miscarriages are about, and that same soul will come back again. But the newbies tend to be really excited to be here, though. They have this like thirst for life. They're just, they could be a little dense and a little naive, and I don't mean that in a mean way. My oldest son, who's 18, I believe he is one of those. The smartest person you'll ever meet, and he is almost like genius level smart, but no common sense at all. And I love him dearly. But I know he's just new to all of this. They don't like confrontation. They don't like conflict. They don't like wars. But they are so full of unconditional love. They're even keeled. They want to help people. They think, they want everybody to be at peace. They're kind of peacekeepers, but they struggle and they're taken advantage of. And that's why I call them naive. Sometimes they're pushovers. And they struggle. So everybody struggles in some arena, depending on kind of their role. But there are a lot of new recruits, the new earth, the newbies here that are not new outside of here, but kind of new to this arena. Or maybe they've had a life thousands of years ago, and then they've been gone for thousands and thousands of years. And now they're like, okay, I'm going to come back again. So it's relatively new to them because they're not used to it. Then we have kind of the wise ones, the kind of like veteran volunteers. They're like, they're just, you can't fool them. You can't lie to them. They're unprogrammable. They don't take BS. They are the black sheep of the family. They're with it. They have a lot of common sense, and they may struggle in the arena of intelligence. They might say, I don't feel like I'm that smart, but they're survivors, and they will create resources if they don't have them, but they will utilize all the resources that they have. They have a lot of wits about them. They're human lie detectors, and they are just very driven. Because they've been around the block a few times. And those are the ones that I talked about in my video recently, which I highly recommend. I think I put it out yesterday, actually, on narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths, and what the difference between those are and why and what that means. So I don't want to go into it now because it was a whole hour video. I talked for an hour. Sorry for those. Thank you for those that watched the whole thing. But it just is a lot to talk about. But some of the veteran volunteers struggle because they've had so many lives here, not because they're trapped, but because they volunteer to help, and they're just over it. I mean, they're just over the nonsense. They're over the drama, and they're just over all of this. And they have, they're very compassionate, but they're losing patience. It's like a parent who loves their child unconditionally, but they're like, child, you got to go away from me for a minute. Like, I'm losing patience with you right now. You love them dearly, but you're like, seriously, get it together. I feel like that's how some starseeds feel about humanity. It's like, I want to feel sorry for, not that I want to feel sorry for you. I want to feel compassionate towards your situation. But like somebody, like they just want to shake them awake a little bit. They're just having a little bit of trouble remaining compassionate all the time or having empathy because they just are just losing their patience. So we have a lot of that going on right now. So I'm sure some of you can relate to that. So we have the newer earth souls that, again, are not new. They are very old, wise souls. I don't like using the word old. They're very wise beings, very enlightened or ascended. I also don't like to use the word master. So, I mean, I know there are labeled ascended masters, or I just don't like the word master because it really feeds into the 3D hierarchy system. Like I'm a Reiki master teacher. I'm a master transpersonal hypnotherapist, but I rarely use that title because I'm uncomfortable with it. But again, that's probably just my thing. So those are the two types of volunteers. I think the children fall into the first category I mentioned, but there are a lot of children who have been around the block. I think my daughter is one of those, and she's been here many times, and she's just like that one that doesn't like, let's go. Why can't you see things my way? What's taking so long? They're instant manifestors. They have very little patience. They lack a little bit of empathy, and they're less humble because they're just like, I'm just over this. I just want to go home. And if you are one of those that have said your whole life, I just want to go home, I don't belong here, you can be in both categories. I've seen new earth children or newer souls that are here for the first time dread it and feel like they're suffocating here and they just want to go home. But I've also seen the starseeds that are the veteran starseeds that I call them, that are also feeling the same way. So I think a lot of people are feeling the exact same way. And I think it's just a natural progression right now in our consciousness. The more we know, the more knowledge we have, the more awareness we have, and the more we let in, and then sometimes the more questions we have or the less patient we become. It's kind of a double-edged sword in a way. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if I am talking too fast. But that brings me to my next point, which is imprinted karma. So as a result of basically everything I just mentioned about the different types of star seeds, why we're here, you could be any of those star seeds, by the way, and take on the role of a healer, a leader, a teacher, a guide. There's a lot of grid workers on the planet right now, or people I've been saying, people are holding the space. I've been saying that for I don't know, almost 8 years now. I didn't even know what I was saying when I first said it. It just came to me and I was like, I don't even know what that means. Obviously now I know what that means. And there's so many people holding the space. Grid workers, light workers. I call little children sometimes the Tesla towers because they're just emitting so many positive frequencies to negate the 3D interference. So anyways, there's so much more than I'm saying, but I just, I want to explain it in a more macro way so that we can understand the imprinted karma. So regardless of if you're an old soul coming in your first life on earth, or a veteran soul that has been here many times, which are also an advanced being, sometimes we have something called imprinted karma or imprinted memories. And the first time I knew about this, I'm going to share a personal experience with you. Maybe 4 years ago, time is so hard to remember these days, but I had a reading with someone, not going to say who, and they told me that a lot of the memories that I had from other lifetimes were imprinted memories, and that they're not really mine. And at the time I got a little defensive. Actually, I didn't get defensive. That's not my personality. But later I thought about it and I wished I had asked more questions because it didn't resonate with me. But I just listened and wrote it down, and I tossed and turned over about it a few days. And it didn't sit well with me. But lo and behold, I started having sessions with people. I think this is the universe's way of helping me experience it first. So then when I have a client that comes in and I learn that about them in their session, it's not completely surprising to me, because if it's super surprising, sometimes I have a hard time relaying it to the person because I'm like, I don't get it. And it's hard for me to give a reading if I don't understand it. So I started seeing that a lot of people are coming in, especially those with ancestral healing. There are a lot of angelics on the planet right now. There are a lot of starseeds that are of the angelic realm that come in, and they are the angelic beings of the planet, but they incarnate as a actual physical being, and they didn't necessarily have to have all these lives of trauma, the sexual abuse or the enslavement or disease or whatever it may be. But when they come in, they have an imprint of a plethora of memories of many, many lifetimes. So sometimes, and which is also why I stopped doing transpersonal hypnotherapy, which, by the way, is another form of Dolores Cannon's method, QHHT, which is also another method of regression hypnosis. So I did that for many years. I don't talk that much about it, but what I was frustrating is it was difficult for the person to tell if the memories that they were seeing when they were being regressed into other lives was actually their own life, or was it an imprint of someone else's life that when they came through this density, they took that on as their own memory. Why would you do that? So we do that in order to help transmute it and to have a memory bank of experiences to help us for whatever we might need that information for the life that we're doing now. So we'll take on a lot more karma and trauma that's imprinted. It's imprinted karma. It's not actually our own karma, but we remember it as if it's our own. And it's really hard to tell the difference. It's very challenging to recognize that. And an example I can give of that are walk-ins. So walk-ins, as I talk about in my book, there's walk-ins and reverse walk-ins, but either way, whichever way you're looking at it, the walk-in will come in and they will take on the memories of the person from the time of birth, so that they have some sort of a foundation. When they come in, they know who everyone is. It's not like they wake up and they have amnesia and they don't know anybody. Most walk-ins will retain the memories of the person before them. Maybe not 100%, but enough. And that doesn't guarantee that they're going to be exactly like that person. They might have different tastes in food or music, et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, they take on the memories. So it's similar to that. When we come in, we can willingly, but we don't know it consciously, but we can willingly take on the karma or the kind of the imprinted karma or trauma or experiences, both good and bad. So it doesn't always have to be bad karma. It could be positive. It could be positive experiences and negative experience, because we learn from both. And so if you are coming in, you might take on a bunch of experiences that aren't necessarily your own. I've done sessions with people who could have sworn they were abducted. And I said, actually, I don't see that. I see that you are taking on the experiences of a lot of different people as your own, but not because you are a psychopath or something, because you are meant to retain those memories for a specific purpose. And we talk about those reasons why. And so it gets really convoluted and it gets really complicated. And I think that's why the more we know, the more we realize we don't know. And that is really disconcerting to a lot of people, because when you feel like you figured it out, we haven't. And then there's so much more to the story than we realize. And it can be very overwhelming. I mean, for myself included, sometimes when I feel like when I wrote my third book, I was like, yes, I got a grasp on all of this information. This is great. And already like less than 6 months later, I'm like, darn it, I wish I had said that. I wish I had added this. Oh man, this is a whole new another chapter I could have added. But like if I had waited till the perfect time, it wouldn't exist, because we are constantly evolving and we are constantly learning new things. And so part of what I wanted to talk about is this need for change. And I think that the most successful starseeds right now are the ones that are becoming more enlightened or activated, are those that are willing to step out of their norm. I talk about I call it getting out of the loop in my first book. I've mentioned it a million times, so I don't want to bring it up again. But getting out of that loop of repetition, or the repetitive patterns, that a lot of it is programming, and we get stuck and we're rigid in our feelings, and we make our life decisions completely based on that. I had a session recently with a woman whose mother had an experience where her husband cheated on her. At some point in their marriage, after their children were a little bit older, this man left her for another woman and ended up getting married and having other children and had a whole nother life and stayed with that woman. And this woman never got over it. And she stayed upset with him her whole life, never got over it, wouldn't go with anybody else, refused to accept it. And so she, as a result of that, she just held in all this anger, resentment, fear, sadness, guilt, shame, all of it, whatever it was, all her life. And then she got sick. She got cancer from it. And this is like the same story I've heard like 5 or 6 times in different ways. But that woman, the only one she's hurting is herself. And she's so stuck in her ways that she is basically telling her family, I don't want to get better. I want to die. I'm giving up. If I can't live with him, I can't live. And it's been like 30 years since they separated. It's a long time. So I think that people who are stuck in their ways, stuck in their truth, insistent upon them being right, or they can't forgive somebody from like 20, 30, 40 years ago. They're still mad at their brother for something that they did to them, like when they were a child and they haven't spoken since. We get stuck in the cement, so to speak, and we are stuck in a loop of trauma. But people don't realize that what that does is it hinders our growth and our ability to evolve, and increase in vibration. And you can't increase in density or consciousness if you are stuck in a low vibration. It's not possible. And my dog's moving around in the background. And so it makes it very convoluted and very complicated. And so I think that if we are willing to at least, if we're willing to at least consider other options, or that we may not be right, or that we might be capable of forgiving, then we are going to get ourselves out of that loop, out of that pattern. And then we start making different choices and different decisions. And then, that's how things shift, and that's how things change gradually, over time. Or it could be a very profound change all at once, depending on one choice that you make. It's incredible. So I saw this meme a long time ago, and I love it so much because it's so true. And I can't remember the specifics, but basically one person is saying to the other person, you've changed. And the other person said back to that person, we're supposed to. And I always resonated with that, because why should we remain the same? We should continuously evolve and change. That's why we're here. Otherwise, we're not learning anything. We're not growing. If I haven't changed from the time I was in my 20s, and I had all this life experience in my 20s, and then I go into my 30s, if I'm not a different person, then something's wrong. And in my 30s, I learned a whole other set of have a lot of experiences. Good things happen, bad things happen, losses, gains, all these things. So when I go into my 40s, I hope that I've changed. I want to be different. I don't want to stay the same, because none of us are perfect. That doesn't exist. And if you are, write me. I'd like to meet you, and you can teach me what to do. But I that's a joke. I don't think anybody's perfect. I don't think perfection exists. And if it did, we would be God. We would be source, and we wouldn't have needed to fractal off. I think that there are some way more evolved than others that are really, truly humble and good at being a leader, a positive leader that leads by example. That's what I was trying to think of. But even those that lead by example still struggle. I try my best to lead by example, but then I have my moments where I just have the epic fails too, like everyone else. And instead of having a pity party for myself and going through this guilt spiral and saying, oh, that's it, I'm not going to help anybody else again because I failed. I say, oh, well, I learned something from that. Maybe I can help others learn faster than I did. And then I use my, example. I do that a lot. So I believe that the way we shift, or the key to shifting in consciousness, is through change. We evolve, we shift, we grow. And I think that is the most complicated part of a relationship, or the most challenging part about a relationship, whether you're married to your spouse, or even your siblings, or your friends, long-term friends, or your parents, even in the child relationship. As you grow and change, there's an ebb and flow with the other person. Let's say it's your spouse, for example. I've been with my husband for over 20 years. That's a long time to be with somebody. And there are times where in the years we've grown like this, and I felt like we were two different people. And I'm like, what the heck? And then next thing you know, we're come back together like magnets, or maybe one of us is there to support the other and the other one isn't. And, and it's fine. But it's really hard. And in those moments where you're feeling like this, it's easy to sometimes for people to walk away because of the 3D programming and the dismantling of the family unit, and the devaluing of the woke agenda of marriage and commitment and that sort of thing. They're teaching our children that it's okay, you can get divorced. It's not a big deal, and that's the tone of marriage has shifted completely. But going back to my point, we grow and we learn together. And that's hard though, and it's challenging. And sometimes I know people who have gotten divorced and then worked on their stuff, and then they got back together, and then they're even stronger. So again, no judgment on my part, but the point is that we are supposed to grow and evolve, and sometimes we evolve out of a relationship with someone, a friend. I have many friends that I thought were my dear friends, best friends for a decade, that I would have called. I called my sister. I don't want to give this person away because I don't want to shame anybody, and there's no hard feelings, so I have to be careful what I say. But we grew apart. We became two different people, two different values, that I think in a healthier period of time, we could have we did accept those differences, but then it got to a point where we couldn't. It was just too hard, and the resonance, the frequency that I was in and she was in was just too different. Again, I'm not saying I was in a better frequency, and she wasn't. It's just different resonance. It's a different radio station, different signals. And it makes it really hard to navigate through that. So, and sometimes I believe people come into your life for short-term contracts. And yes, that could be 10 years. Yes, that could be 50 years. Well, that's more of a long-term contract. But the point is, sometimes it's not meant to last, and that's okay. We served our roles in each other's life. And hopefully we helped each other grow. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. But nevertheless, it's time for us to go our separate ways. And that's just the reality of life. And it gets more complicated, obviously, with spouses, parents, and your children. That's a whole other layer that we're working through. But again, we volunteered to come here. And I think that anybody that watches me or reads my books or resonates with what I say are likely in the category where you are you're a starseed waking up, and the timelines are shifting and moving. And I've talked about timelines shifting and healing and merging for years. I mean, I started doing this about 5 or 6 years ago in my sessions. And again, admittedly, I did not understand what I was being shown, because a lot of what I do, I've learned like on the job training. Like I'm literally in a session with someone, and one of their guides will come through, galactic beings. A lot of the times it's an Arcturian, and they'll show me how to do something. And it will work with that person. And I'm like, well, let me try it again with this next person. And I'm like, well, God darn it, it worked. And then I do it, and I keep doing it. And then sometimes it doesn't work. And then I realize, well, it's just not the type of healing that this person needs. So I don't discount it. But anyways, I evolved through that learning process. And so timeline, which is what I refer to as lifetimes, so lives, we're always told that there are an infinite amount of timelines or the potentials or possibilities, right? So like, there's another version of Sherri who didn't marry my husband now, or maybe had 4 children, or maybe only had 1 child, or when the fork in the road came, I chose a different direction. And I always thought, wow, that's really overwhelming. I mean, there could be thousands and millions or infinite. And I was very overwhelmed with that in my, the kind of the beginning years of my spiritual journey. And I said, my brain can't comprehend that. It's way too confusing. And over time, I think I've just understood it more as my consciousness has expanded to the knowing that I think we're trained to think too much in this reality. So it's like we have to know every angle, every piece of the puzzle. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. And when it comes to spirituality and metaphysics and our evolution, we recognize that we don't actually need to know everything. We don't have to fill in every blank. And the more we try to do that and resist, the less we're going to understand. And the less we do that, the more we're going to understand. And so what I started to put together is that it's all energy. So those other versions of me that may have splintered out into many different directions, there's energy associated with those other timelines, other versions of the experience that I'm going through. And then at some point, if there's not enough energy to fuel a particular angle or a route that some part of me has chosen, then I believe that it just dissolves. Well, that doesn't dissolve. It transmutes, and the energy just kind of goes back and funnels into another timeline. And that's how we have so many of these different possibilities or potentials. But eventually, they don't all come to fruition. They don't all ignite. They sometimes they just transmute. Or they become one with the universe and they recycle through. So think about it in forms of energy. And right now that's happening a lot because we have the collective main timelines. So whatever we focus our energy on as a collective, we are manifesting that. And that's what's really confusing about the whole 3D to 5D potentials here, is because I do believe that we are shifting in dimensions, but also density. And a majority of the population, if we are connected to a higher density and a higher dimension and a higher timeline, because of our mindset, our belief systems, or our ability to see through the illusions, or our empowered sovereign self standing up and saying, I do not consent, and many, many, many other options. I think there is a good percentage of the population in the fifth dimension, but also in the third at the same time, because we still are living amongst family members and jobs. And so we're kind of in between these two worlds, and it can be quite overwhelming and confusing. And it's happening to people all the time, where the timelines are getting confusing, where, you know, it's happened to me recently, where I go down the same street all the time, and there's a tree, the same tree. I always look at it. And then one day I went and there's no tree. And it's not like it was cut down, like it didn't exist. And so these minute examples that get your attention sometimes can show you that you are tapping into a different timeline. And you and your spouse, or you and your coworkers, can also be in different timelines in different moments. And that can be, it's just like, I call them bleed throughs. And it's really disconcerting, because then you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, what timeline am I in? Am I in a, you know, like you can freak out a little bit. So you just remain positive through all of it, and recognize that it's just we're becoming more multidimensional. And when we become more multidimensional, we can instantly manifest, instantly heal, instantly create. And we can do everything all at the same time. We don't have this linear construct of time inhibiting our ability to do stuff that we have in the 3D. So everything is so slow, or it's so heavy, or it's just so hard to do things. Whereas over here, that's why I think, you know, a lot of starseeds struggle. Like a lot of the new earth children, I get this complaint all the time, where they don't understand why they just can't have everything and do everything all at the same time. And they're seemingly bored all the time, because they're used to a much more fast-paced reality. And here it's just, the time matrix is really slow, and you feel like it's, you know, taking forever. But I think most of us can agree that time matrix is speeding up, which I think is a testament to our ascension, our ability to make things go faster based on how we are instantly and connectively manifesting the higher timeline, if that makes sense. Something that I thought of the other day too, this clarion call. This is the last. Well, I could talk about a lot of different things, but the clarion call is the last thing I want to talk about as an example of the timeline. I don't know if those of you watching this are familiar with it, but there are a lot of beautiful people talking about the clarion call, where there's going to be this call, this harp sounding, or not harp, I forget the instrument, where it will make this beautiful sound, and then we will all kind of be taken to another reality, another earth, kind of parallel to this one, and will be rescued. And those that are ascended and ready to go will go. And I never resonated with that. I think that we are here to stay. We're just going to shift in dimensions. So we'll stay in the same earth, but we'll be in a higher dimensional field with a higher density of consciousness. And we have to work together as a team. That's part of it. That's why we agreed to come here. We're on assignment. So we are going to work together to rebuild. So we need to stay here. This earth is beautiful. But my point is, I wondered about all the thousands, maybe millions of people who are connected to this belief that this is going to happen, and they will bet all of their money on it. And some of them have. And I thought to myself, I wonder if that is just a timeline for a group of starseeds that are actually planning to leave. Like they're retiring, they're done. This is their last life, and they're getting to a certain point where we've reached a collective marker point, or a space in our reality and time where we are okay, and we are going to keep evolving, but maybe we don't need them. They don't need to stay. And they're connected to the idea that, or the knowing, the knowing that they will leave. And that's why I think there's so many people that believe that. And again, I resonate with the thought that that could be what it is, that in their timeline, that they exist in their density of consciousness and their knowing that they will go somewhere. But I also think that there are a lot of people that won't and are connected to this idea that we will stay here and we will rebuild. So anyways, that's just another example. Another example is the whole, I don't even want to say in a few days from now, the thought of an event that may occur. That's all I'm going to say, because I don't even want to put thought into it. But my point is, perhaps there is a timeline that's projected by the dark entities of consciousness that are trying to project thoughts in our mind to create the reality that they want of something bad happening. So that could be another alternate timeline. It gets very confusing. I still think we have one unified timeline, but I'm just saying that if in quantum entanglement and reality, and you talk about quantum physics and energy, and it flows where our mind goes, and we determine a lot of things, then we could have subsets, but then we ultimately get back. It's kind of like you're on a highway and you get off a side street and then you can just get back on if you want, kind of things like that. So, don't focus on those negative events. You make decisions that are best for you and your family, but we don't talk about it too much. We don't put our attention to it too much. We don't share it all over social media with everybody. I know that there are good, well-intentioned people that are just trying to inform. And then there are others that are just kind of you're just marinating in that dark energy. So that's another example. I don't want to talk about that too much. So, wow, I've talked really fast, a lot. The lessons that we're here to learn, just think about, if you're trying to figure out if you're on track or not, just think about the lessons that you're here to learn. And this goes back with change, your ability to change. If you're here to learn about something like grief, and you have felt like you've been dealing with grief your whole life, like everyone you've known in your family, has died prematurely, and or you've lost people and you're dealing with grief. Maybe perhaps it's not a dark agenda. Maybe that's what you came in here to learn. So you're being presented with experiences that emit the emotion of grief so that you can work through that. So try to think about the lessons that you're here. Could be a part of your life theme. And it's all about being mindful. Sometimes the best thing that people, I think, get out of having sessions with me is not where their soul origin, is not how many lives they've had. Like, oh, that's really fun. But I think it's this deep knowing and understanding that, okay, I do have a purpose, and validating their knowing that they are on the right track, and then they feel motivated to make certain decisions in a certain way that they felt uncomfortable with before, or uncertainty about before. So it's all about empowering people, instead of making them feel like they have to keep coming back to you for more information. Sometimes I tell people, I don't want to do another session with you. No offense, I love everybody, but I don't want anyone to ever feel like they have to rely on me. Checking in periodically is one thing, but people who just want more and more and more, month after month after month, sometimes it's you are crippling yourself with your ability to discern on your own. And I think that's when spirit guides come in to guide us and to help us. And there are different types of spirit guides. And I think a lot of galactic beings tend to, what I've noticed in my sessions, a lot of galactic star seeds that are really not from here and not very connected to Earth tend to have more earthbound spirit guides. So interdimensional beings like the Sasquatch, or fairies, elementals, things like that. Animal spirit guides, indigenous beings to the planet, things like that. And then the more indigenous and connected to the Earth tend to have, I have noticed, have a nice balance of galactic spirit guides to help them counterbalance. So it's interesting, but we all have spirit guides. We all have animal guides. We all have guardian angels. Nobody is special in that one has one and one doesn't. We're just not always aware that they're there, but we are all communicating with them all the time. And they generally will communicate with us through our own thoughts, like telepathically. We'll get an epiphany or a knowing, or they're really brilliant at getting our attention. We're on our phone and something grabs our attention, or we're called to watch a video that we would have never even thought of, or we don't even know the person, or number sequences I've talked about. So they're really creative, and they will, the signs are really powerful sometimes. But we all have guides We have galactic guides, interdimensional guides. We have earthbound guides. We have so many different guides. We have animal guides. We have our soul family guides. We generally will have one guide that is connected to the planet that we've had other lives with, if we've had many lives here. You know, it might be our sister in a past life, or our mother in a past life, or our father in a past life, or our brother, etc. That chooses to be with us from the time we're born all the way throughout our entire life. And then we have those guides that I talk about that come in for periods of your life, for maybe a decade, 5 years, or whatever it is where you're doing something specific, this next shift, this next thing. They can't interfere. They can't tell you what to do. They are not mean. But some of them are stern, and some of them are, you know, they just try to nudge us in the right direction, because sometimes we get derailed by our emotions, but also the 3D interference that I talk about. And they just try to help us a little bit so that we can make it easier for ourselves. But we do have free will. So we have to ask for their guidance. And you don't say it, you know, in a moment of weakness, and you're surrendering, and you're back against the wall, and you don't know what else to do, and you're begging. That they don't want that. They want you to call on them when you are just looking for general guidance and you haven't reached that point. You, in your mind, you can say, you know, I'm open to guidance or signs or interventions from my guides that are only here for my highest good, that are only in alignment with my highest good. And all of those people involved, or all those involved in all dimensions, time and space. Make sure you're specific, though, when you ask, that they are of the light, they are for your highest good only, so that we're clear about who we're asking for guidance from or help from. You don't have to say it out loud. I know there are a lot of, there are some, not a lot, there are some people I've heard talk about how you have to speak out loud for your guides to hear. If we can communicate telepathically with galactic beings, you think your spirit guide can't hear your request. Now, we do have ethics involved, and we do have our free will, so they're not going to be in your thoughts all the time. But I guarantee you, if you in your mind are asking for their help or saying, I want to communicate with you, you're opening the door for them to communicate, and they can hear you, and you don't have to say it out loud. So ask for them, ask for their guidance, ask them to clear the path for you, ask them to give you signs, because they're there. That's what they're there for. So, okay, I really don't mean to ignore everyone in the chat. I'll put my notes down, and I will start going back from the top. And I've been talking for 48 minutes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So again, thank you everybody for watching. I hope I didn't bore you. I hope that I said something of value tonight that made sense. Again, these are things that I've been hearing in my sessions, and it's been people are struggling, and it's hard. And so sometimes we just need to be reminded things we already know. I'm sure I didn't say anything tonight that is a huge revelation that people were like, oh my God, I had no idea. But sometimes it just helps to be reminded of certain things when you're feeling like you are really struggling, or you're feeling alone, like my video, why are we all feeling alone? The starseed one. Birdie had asked me a question from the very beginning. I didn't want to forget. I'm definitely not the same person I used to be, but where do I go from here? Well, actually, I hope now that after everything I just said, that I gave you the answer to that. You know, there are infinite possibilities. How do you want to be of service to humanity? What do you want to spend the rest of your time with? How do you want, like, you don't want to make the traumas or the hard times that you've had up until this point to be in vain. So how can you turn that around and help other people? How can you project positivity into the world? How can you be a part of the change? How do you create boundaries to protect yourself? You know, being mindful of grounding, and reconnecting and finding your soul tribe, and you know, disconnecting yourself from those in your life that might be not of your highest good, that are preventing you from moving forward. So hopefully that helps. I mean, I could do a whole other hour just on that, but gosh, that would really bore people. There's no Zoom link to the meeting. This is a live, so hopefully you figured that out. Yeah, just a lot of people agreeing. Yes, Dennis, thank you. That's well said, way better than I said it. I wonder if you're still watching right now. A real master knows they're always a student. You know, excuse me, I think the best teachers realize that they have mastered a certain topic to some degree, but they're always willing to learn, and they're always willing to be a student as well and also learn things, and they're not rigid about what they know, and they can admit that, oh wow, it could be done a different way. And so we're all learning. But that's great. I like the way you said that. Oh, I never talk too fast. That's nice, Mary, but a lot of people say I do, so I don't know. Oh, this is a great one. Yes. Dolores Cannon said that when you forgive someone, you set two people free, the person who hurt you and yourself. I talk about this in my first book, Intuitive Transformation Evolution, and the power of forgiveness, because you are remembering in that moment that soul to soul, you don't know if you had a contract with that person to learn something, or you're just saying, I recognize that you are down here in this third density and you're struggling just as much as I do. And, we don't know the elements on their end. So you're not forgiving that person necessarily for what they did, the act of it, but you're forgiving their soul, and you're just disconnecting yourself so that you're no longer energetically connected. Because when we don't forgive, we don't realize that we have cords connected. I just did a class on this recently. We inadvertently have cords connected to that person negatively, affecting both people, and it can really be detrimental, and it can hinder both of you from being released from that contract. Yeah, it's called growth. Let's see. What other questions? A lot of nice comments. So thank you guys for saying that. Yeah, Suzanne, it's, a lot of us are ending relationships 20, 30, 40. I've had couples that have been together like their more than half their life. They're elderly and they are divorcing. And it's a really sad reality, but I think right now we're just being encouraged to do what's best for us, not in a selfish way, but it's the reality is that we're not all on the same page anymore. And sometimes it's better to walk away than remaining in a vibration of negativity. And, a lot of children say that, parents think that staying together for their children is the best thing, but they don't realize that the children feel and sense everything. And it's almost more hurtful for them to see their parents struggling in an animosity and anger with each other all the time. It breaks their heart, and they actually get, they develop solar plexus blockages as a result of that. They can develop stomach issues, digestive issues. It's a whole thing. So it's a challenge, though. Again, I don't judge people who got divorced. I know I talk about how they're trying to break up the family units and how horrible it is, but I also am a realist. I've been around the block a few times, I think, and and it happens. I don't judge anybody that does get a divorce, but I just hate what they're doing to our children and making it seem like, it's just terrible. Anyways. Let's see. A lot of nice comments. I'm sorry if I passed your comment, and put them in capital letters because sometimes I miss them. Thanks for joining in from Norway. Wow, that's awesome. Wow. I don't know if I went through that too fast, but I didn't see any other questions. So I apologize if you have a question. And oh, what is this? Okay. Oh, Claudette. You're 53 and waking up for the last 10 years. Night terrors. Oh, that's a really hard one. A lot of children, I would say 90% of the children that I work with have night terrors. And that is a lot has to do with their starseed kind of status. They come in like comets of light, and they are targeted by the dark reality, by the shadow beings, which are just the minion beings that really have no power, but they're sent by the darker hierarchy of the dark system to come and terrorize the children. And so they don't sleep. I did a whole video on this. They don't sleep well. And if you don't sleep well during vital developmental periods, that could cause behavioral issues, developmental delays. I mean, a lot more physiological issues, but it also it feeds into the fear loosh, and so many other things, and it's really difficult. So I've done a lot of videos on recommendations. I talk about things in my book, but It's a really challenging thing to navigate through. That's why my daughter slept with me for years, and now she's 9 and she still comes in and tries to sleep with me, or at least sleeps with me for part of the night, and it helps her feel safe. And I know families that I work with where their teen daughters and sons are still, sleeping in the room. So we just take it one day at a time, and realize that, we can do a lot by not consenting, by using crystals, by our intention, standing in our power. As the child gets older, teach them to not consent, and call on their guardian angels. But I did a whole video. I recommend you calling on the animal kingdom, because it's so powerful. And I tell you exactly how to do it. It's a video from maybe a few weeks or a month ago, and you can call on their animal guide protector to sit with them in the room all night, and also call upon the animal kingdom to watch over your home in all dimensions, not just around, below, and above your home, but also in the home and through the different dimensions, to protect in the astral space. So assign them an animal. If nothing comes to you intuitively, assign that animal to be with them. And they're energetically there so that they can travel through dream time. So let's say, she has night terrors, then you send her lion with her and say, stay with her in her room throughout her night, but also follow her through her astral travels. Or maybe it's an eagle, or maybe she has a few. And you put that out there, and they respond. It works every single time. So that's something also that you can do. I appreciate all of you guys as well. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions, but I appreciate all of your time and listening to me. Again, I hope that this was helpful this evening with the content that I talked about, and I hope that it's helped in some way. If it's helped you, maybe you can share the video later. Yeah, I would suggest an animal spirit for an 8-year-old, or any age, really. I have one. I call on mine, and each one of my children have one. I even call on one for my husband on behalf of him, and we can have many. So it's all relative. Watch the video, because it's really good. I mean, I don't mean that sounded so egocentric. I don't mean that the video is good, but the information is really good. So, all right. I will do something else soon. I'm trying to do these every few weeks. So I'll come to the table with another set of things that I feel like it's really important to go over. And then I'll keep doing the 3D interference videos. So I appreciate all of your continued support, your encouragement. If you've read my book, the newest one, please leave a review. It helps me a lot. And also I love to read, people's feedback. If you don't want to put anything publicly, just email me and let me know how much you like, what you liked about it, or and it really makes my day. So, oh, Chastity, you have to rewind. It's okay. You can rewind and watch it later. So, all right, everybody, have a great night. I'll see you guys very, very soon. Until next time, I hope you guys all have a great night, and I'll see you guys in a